and then I compressed the living out of it. Yo, what's up guys, this is SIIK, and today we're gonna have a look on the project of the Feel the Sun remix, which sounds like this. By the way, if you want to get this project with all the presets, all the samples, everything, it's out now on my website siiksounds.net, and I will leave the link in the description. So yes, we are in the project file. This is basically the first break and the first drop. We can start with the first break, which sounds like this.
All the ways that they trying to rush us, all the days we can never replace.
So basically nothing really crazy. I just added like one reed space, one synth, and the vocal, which I barely touched because it was pretty good processed already. So the only thing I did, I added a reverb, I added a delay, and EQ just to get rid of the lows that we don't need. Then we have the respace, which sounds like this. And I added a lot of processing, so without it, it sounds like this. And with it. So basically, without the processing, it sounds pretty bad. But yeah, I added like 2 camel crushers, 1 OTT, a filter freak, which as you can see has a notch filter that's moving around, so it creates the phase effect, and some crazy EQs just to tame the sound a bit. And the filter, I wanted just to have like the low end of the sound. So next up, I added a synth, which sounds like this. Which is basically a harmony to the respace. When I play them together, they sound like this. Which is pretty nice. And basically the synth comes from Oddity, which is a free analog style plugin. And yeah, I didn't actually process it at all. I just cut the low ends a bit, as you can see. Nothing crazy. Then I added some background effects, which sound like this. This sounds I really use a lot. It's like a sustain string and a vinyl sound. Yeah, basically that's it, and some claps with reverb and stuff. So moving on to the next part, I received actually this guitar from Dlugosh. But I thought, like, what if I added another guitar, but like an electric one? So I added this electric guitar, but I made like an ARP of the chords. This guitar comes from Contact. To be exact, it comes from the session guitarist Electric Sunburst, which I love because the guitars are like amazing. And I added just some reverb and some has to push it more to the sides. Together they sound like this. Yeah, and basically I added some claps and snaps. I wanted to bring out the festival atmosphere of the song because it was a remix of the festival anthem, a Sundance festival anthem. So I wanted to maintain like the festival vibe. So we're moving on to the next part, to the first part of the build-up. So I have some elements that are from the drop, which are these. This is the stab, and these are like the fills. I added a lot of reverb to the stab. Just to introduce the elements of the drop. Then I added a guitar loop, which is beat crushed. Then I added this bass from Mohawk called Basilico, and it's really cool when it's like pitching up. Then I added this weird impact because I don't know, I just liked it and I wanted to use it. Then the usual sweeps, sweep down, sweeps up. Then next we have the vocal that is pitched down 12 semitones and bit crushed. Sounds like this. And together with the original.
So let the fans know the show's still on. Let the game.
Then I added some claps just to increase the atmosphere even more. So yes, that's basically it for the first part of the build-up. In the second part, there's a lot more going on. It's basically everything that was in the first part, but it's like pitching up, or there's more drums. I will show you. First of all, I added the sub, which is pitching down, pitching up. Then I added this brass. Which basically is from Contact. It's like a really low brass and gives like a really dark vibe, which I like. Then I introduced the sounds from the drop, like this. I actually used just like a endless smile and like a low pass and high pass filter. I just automated the cutoff to make it like it's building up. Then I've got this crazy sound, which I will explain in the next part. Also, I introduced the leads from the drop, of course, with a lot of reverb. And yeah, I added more effects, like more white noises. Then we have the vocal, which I chopped up and actually automated the foreman shift and the endless smile. Yeah, that's basically it for the vocal. And yeah, I did a lot of snares, so they sound like this. Yes, so they are really energetic in my opinion, so they do the job. I also added the kick from the drop. Just I like to use kicks in the builds because sometimes I feel like the snares are pretty thin. Then in the middle of the build up, I've got this fill from SIIK combined with some of my samples. Yeah, you can recognize it probably. In the pre-drop, we have these atmospheres from Tom and Jane that are bit crushed, which sounds like this. Yeah, I used the Deep Blue Crusher for that. Yeah, and just I added my signature fill, which is this. You probably recognize it. So moving on to the drop, which sounds like this. Yeah, pretty thick. So let's start with the kick. I've got the punchy layer and the click layer. Basically, this is just like a normal kick, but it's high passed. Then in this part of the project, we have like a lot of samples, which all do their thing. But I think like the most important one is the step, which sounds like this. Basically, it's like a sample from Wolfgang Gartner. Just called like, it's like a dark piano. So basically I just added like a bit of width with the reverb and with some ozone imager. And yeah, that's all. The other stuff is just like for the build up, just to add a lot of reverb and stuff. Then we have like all the percussion sounds, all the fills, which sound like this. Yeah, so that's basically just to keep like the rhythm going. Just it would be pretty boring without them, that's for sure. I just added like one more layer to the step just to keep it evolving. So let's go to the most important part in my opinion, which are the basses. And yeah, they sound like this. Yep, thick. So this is like the one sound I showed earlier in the build up. You will be surprised. But yeah, let's play it. So it's like a bass from Faceplant. Without processing, it sounds like this. And then I added, like, as you see, a lot of processing. Yeah, this sounds bad, but when you play it like really like in a choppy way, like this, it sounds pretty cool. So one effect that's doing this, it's called Effector. It's from FL Studio, and I used the Vox filter on it. So I tried like to automate it, the X and Y. As you can see, I tried to automate it like in different ways to get a different sound. This combination really worked for me in this track. Moving on to the next sound, which is the gritty bass line, which you probably remember from Don't Eat You. Actually, it's nothing really crazy. I just added a lot of volume through the EQ and just limited it. There's nothing crazy about it. Like without the processing, it's just a bit quieter. Yep. So let's go to the sub. Which is basically the sub from Contact, from the Substance library. It's called Alias Bob. I really like it. And I didn't do anything crazy. I just pushed down the low mids and limited it. That's it. Yeah, nothing crazy in here. So let's go to the main bass, which is like the main part. It sounds like this. Excuse me for the lag. My PC is not handling it. So I can show you the bass without any effects. And yeah, let's go through them. So firstly, I just EQ'd the really lows, but that's not necessary. Like that EQ doesn't need to be there. I added some OTT just to make it thick. Then I EQ'd it once again. I added some highs. Then I ditched some low mids. And then I added this multipass. So with it sounds like this, which sounds a lot better. I just searched through like all the presets and found this, and it was pretty cool. So yeah, it's just like saturation and compression. Nothing else. Like there's a bit of delay, but I turned it down. Then I added this Saturn, which really like colored the sound. It's also a preset called Crispy Fats 2. So yeah, it was just an accident, this processing. I just switched around all the presets and yeah, I came up with this. Then I added some reverb, some EQ just to tame the sub because it was a bit too much. And then I compressed the living out of it. And limited the living out of it. Then I routed it into another channel because I didn't have much place here. So I added some effects. For example, this vowel filter, which you recognize from the second part of the drop, which it is used here. Yeah, I just automated like the X and Y values in there. Yeah, then some crystallizer just to make it weird. Yep. Yeah, that's basically it for this sound. There's just one more EQ that's doing like just like minor changes. So then we have the lead, which sounds like this. It's also a preset from Mofag, which I edited like and processed in a different way. Without processing, it sounds like this. Yeah, it's pretty weak. I wanted it to be on the side, so I added a has, then I added a camel crusher and an OTT just to increase the harmonic content. Then some EQing. I really wanted the highs, so I pushed the highs a lot. I added some reverb and some delay. It's basically for the build-up, and a filter which is automated in the drop, and then a limiter just to make sure it doesn't go over 0 dB, and the kickstart. Yeah, so that's basically it. So then moving on to the second part of the drop, I added this vocal chop, which sounds like this. It sounds pretty weird, but in context it really worked. Like before the effects, it sounded like this. So I added like grow speed just to make it choppy. Then I added a manipulator for the formant shifting. We're gonna use it later. I've got a kickstart that I didn't use, a reverb for the automating, and an OTT just to push it even more. Then I've got just like a limiter just to keep it under 0 dB, as I did with the other sounds. And the kickstart for the sidechaining. I picked a different part of the vocal here and formant shifted it down. Yeah, it sounds pretty bad on its own, but it really works in the context. Yeah, that's basically it. I think that's it for the drop. I mean, if you got any question, just write me a DM or write it in the comments. I will answer anything to this track. I hope it was pretty clear. I'm not the best one at explaining, so literally just text me and I will answer anything. Or just download the FLP and you can literally have access to anything I did here and find out any techniques that I didn't cover here. But anyways, thank you guys for watching and have a really wonderful day. Ciao ciao!